Okay, stay with me here, because what I am about to share genuinely gave me chills the first time I heard it. And I think it is going to completely reframe the way you think about meditation. Not meditation as a relaxation technique. Not meditation as something you should probably be doing but never quite get around to. Meditation as a biological technology so powerful that when scientists first saw the evidence of what it does to the brain, they literally thought their equipment had broken. Let me tell you what happened. Dr. Richard Davidson is one of the most respected neuroscientists studying the brain and emotion alive today. And some years ago, he had the opportunity to study something that most researchers never get access to: the brain of a Buddhist monk with tens of thousands of hours of meditation practice, wired up to the most sophisticated brain mapping equipment available. Think about this for a second. These researchers were used to looking at subtle signals buried in mountains of neural noise. Normally, when they run this kind of brain scan, the data comes back as a complex tangle of electrical activity that requires days of computational processing. Sophisticated algorithms working through vast amounts of information just to find the meaningful signals hidden inside all the noise. It is, as Davidson himself described it, like trying to find a needle in a haystack. So they set up the equipment, the monk began meditating, and the data started coming in. And here is the part that is genuinely hard to believe until you understand what was actually happening. The signal did not need any processing. It did not need algorithms or days of computation or anything else. It was so clear, so strong, so unmistakable that the researchers could see it with their own eyes on the screen in real time. Just sitting there, completely obvious, unlike anything they had ever seen before. Their first reaction? They thought something was wrong, a bug in the system, a problem with the electrodes, some kind of malfunction that was producing a false reading, because what they were seeing simply did not match anything in their scientific experience of how the human brain behaves. So they dismantled the entire setup, checked everything, rebuilt it from scratch, and ran the test again. Same result. The signal was real. What they were seeing were gamma waves, a specific type of high-frequency brain oscillation that everyone has, but that in ordinary people last for less than a second and show up with relatively low amplitude. In this monk's brain, while meditating, these waves were enormous, highly synchronized across different regions of the brain, and they lasted not for milliseconds but for the entire duration of the meditation session. Minutes and minutes of sustained gamma activity at an amplitude and consistency that the scientific community had simply never documented before. Are you following me so far? Because here is where it gets really interesting. The researchers discovered something even more startling when they began studying other long-term meditators, people with more than 60,000 hours of practice. These individuals were showing elevated gamma wave activity, not just during meditation, but all the time, in ordinary waking life, while talking, eating, going about their day. The gamma state had become their default, their baseline, the normal condition of their brain rather than a peak state they occasionally accessed. And when you understand what gamma waves actually do, stay with me, because this is the part that connects everything. You start to understand why this discovery was so significant, not just for neuroscience, for anyone who is genuinely trying to create a different life. Gamma waves are associated with peak cognitive performance, enhanced focus, creativity, and insight. The ability to synthesize information rapidly and perceive connections that are simply invisible from lower brain states. The capacity to access a kind of clarity and expansiveness that most people only touch in rare moments of genuine flow. Now, and I want you to really sit with this, Dr. Joe Dispenza has spent years teaching that the elevated state of being from which genuine manifestation operates is not a metaphysical concept. It is a neurological one. It is a specific brain state. And when I first heard Davidson's research and understood what sustained gamma activity actually looks like in a living human brain, I realized that what Dispenza calls the new state of being and what Davidson's monks were producing through consistent meditation practice are describing the same thing from two completely different directions. One from neuroscience, one from consciousness research, both pointing at the same door. And by the end of this conversation, I am going to share exactly how understanding this science changed my entire relationship with meditation and why I now consider it the most non-negotiable part of my daily practice. Not because I should, because I genuinely understand what it is doing. If you are new here, hit subscribe and grab the free PDF on equal hours and their meanings linked in the description. Now let's go deeper. So now you know what happened in that laboratory. You know that a monk's brain produced gamma waves so powerful and so sustained that scientists had to dismantle their equipment just to convince themselves they were seeing something real. And you know that long-term meditators carry this elevated brain state not just during practice but as their default condition throughout the day. Now let me tell you what gamma waves actually do. Because this is the part that connects all of this directly to manifestation, and it is the part that most people never hear when they read about meditation research. Think about this for a second. When gamma waves are consistently present in the brain, several things happen simultaneously. Focus sharpens to a degree that most people have only experienced in rare peak moments. Creative insight becomes more accessible, not as something you strain toward, but as something that simply arrives. Because the brain is operating at a frequency where connections between seemingly unrelated ideas happen naturally and rapidly. The ability to perceive possibilities that were previously invisible, to literally see options and pathways that your brain in a lower state simply could not register, increases dramatically. And here is what I want you to really sit with. If you cannot perceive a possibility, you cannot choose it. You cannot move toward it. You cannot manifest it. It simply does not exist in your experiential reality, regardless of whether it exists in the world. This is exactly what Bashar has been teaching for decades, that you cannot see what you are not vibrating. And what Dr. Davidson's research shows is that this is not just a spiritual metaphor. It is a neurological fact. The brain state you are operating from literally determines the range of possibilities available to your perception. And gamma wave activity expands that range in ways that lower frequency brain states simply cannot access. Now, and stay with me here, because this is where it gets genuinely exciting. Dr. Joe Dispenza has spent years researching and teaching something that connects to this research in a way that I find almost too precise to be coincidental. Dispenza teaches that genuine manifestation does not happen from your ordinary waking state. It happens from what he calls the elevated state of being, a specific neurological and energetic condition in which you are no longer generating the same thoughts, the same emotions, and the same biological signals that have been producing your current reality. A state in which you have genuinely become, at least temporarily, a different version of yourself. One that is no longer defined by the limitations, the fears, and the habitual patterns of the person you have been. And when I looked at what that elevated state actually involves neurologically, the combination of elevated gamma activity, reduced amygdala dominance, heightened prefrontal activation, genuine coherence between different regions of the brain, I realized something that genuinely stopped me in my tracks. Dispenza's elevated state of being and Davidson's sustained gamma state are describing the same neurological condition, from completely different research traditions, using completely different language, arriving at the same biological destination. Which means that consistent meditation practice is not just good for stress reduction or focus or general well-being. It is the most direct and most scientifically validated pathway to the specific brain state from which Dispenza and Neville Goddard and Bashar and every consciousness teacher I have found genuinely credible describes genuine manifestation as becoming not effortful but natural. Let me make this even more concrete. In previous videos on this channel, we talked about Dr. Bruce Lipton's research showing that fear sends biological signals of contraction and survival to every cell in the body, and that from that contracted biological state, manifestation is not just difficult but physiologically blocked. If you've not watched that video yet, I am going to leave it on the end screen because it provides the biological foundation for everything I am sharing today, and I genuinely think it will change how you understand your own body as a manifestation instrument. Now, here is the connection that I think is the most practically important in this entire conversation. Gamma wave states are neurologically incompatible with the fear response. You cannot be in sustained, synchronized, high-amplitude gamma activity and simultaneously be running the amygdala-dominated threat detection program that Lipton identifies as the primary biological block to manifestation. The two states are mutually exclusive at the neurological level, which means that a consistent meditation practice, one that genuinely produces gamma wave activity over time, is not just improving your mood or your focus. It is progressively dismantling the biological infrastructure of the fear response that has been blocking your manifestation at the cellular level, replacing it neurologically with the expansive, creative, genuinely open brain state from which creation happens naturally. Are you starting to see why the monks were onto something? And why scientists were shocked when they finally had the tools to measure what those thousands of hours of practice were actually producing? But here is what I need to address before we talk about practice. Because understanding why most people's brains are working against their manifestation without any conscious awareness of it is the piece that makes everything else land differently. And that is exactly where we are going next. Okay, so here is the part that I think is going to make a lot of things click into place. Things that maybe you have been wondering about for a while without quite being able to name them. Why does the mind seem to default to the negative? Why, even when things are genuinely going well financially, does something in you keep scanning for what could go wrong? Why does it feel like you have to work so hard to maintain a positive, abundant, expansive state, while fear, worry, and scarcity seem to reassert themselves almost effortlessly the moment you stop actively pushing against them? The answer is not a character flaw. It is not a lack of spiritual development. It is not evidence that you are somehow less capable of manifestation than other people. It is evolution, and understanding this changes everything about how you relate to your own mind. Think about this for a second. Your brain is not a modern piece of equipment operating in a modern world. It is an ancient piece of equipment, one that was shaped over millions of years of human evolution, operating in a modern world it was never designed for, and the primary job it was given, the function it optimized for above everything else across all those millions of years, was not creativity. Not abundance, not the expansive, open, genuinely receptive state from which manifestation operates. It was survival. Specifically, it was threat detection. The ability to scan the environment constantly for anything that could kill you, harm you, or put you at a disadvantage, and to respond to those threats faster than conscious thought could process them. Because in the environment our ancestors lived in, the cost of missing a threat was death. And the cost of misidentifying something safe as dangerous was just a moment of unnecessary fear. That asymmetry, where missing threats is catastrophic and false alarms are merely inconvenient, is precisely why the brain evolved what neuroscientists call the negativity bias. The tendency to register, process, and remember negative experiences more deeply, more vividly, and more persistently than positive ones. To give potential threats more attentional weight than potential rewards. To spend more cognitive resources on what could go wrong than on what could go right. And here is what makes this so directly relevant to your financial life and your manifestation practice. That same negativity bias that kept your ancestors alive on the savannah is running in your brain right now. In your financial decisions, in your relationship with money and opportunity and the possibilities available to you. Not because there are predators in your environment, but because the brain cannot always distinguish between a genuine physical threat and a financial worry, a social anxiety, or a habitual thought pattern about scarcity and limitation. To your nervous system, the fear of financial instability activates many of the same neural circuits as the fear of physical danger. The brain does not have a separate category for this is just a money worry, not an actual threat. It processes the signal and responds accordingly, orienting your attention toward the problem, narrowing your perceptual field, reducing your capacity for creative thinking and expansive possibility, and keeping you locked in the vigilant, contracted state that was brilliant for surviving predators, but is genuinely counterproductive for creating abundance. Think with me, and I mean really sit with this for a moment. If your brain is spending the majority of its waking hours in a state of low-grade threat detection, scanning for financial dangers, rehearsing worst-case scenarios, paying more attention to what is not working than to what is possible, what frequency do you think it is broadcasting? What signal are those 50 trillion cells receiving, hour after hour, throughout the ordinary texture of your day? This is the piece that Dr. Bruce Lipton's research makes undeniable. Fear sends contraction signals to every cell in the body, and contraction at the cellular level is the biological opposite of the open, expansive, creative state from which genuine manifestation operates. I have a full video on this channel that goes deep into exactly how this mechanism works. I am leaving it on the end screen because if you have not watched it yet, it is going to make everything we are talking about today land at a much deeper level. Now here is what I find genuinely exciting about the connection between the negativity bias and meditation. And this is the part that makes the science so immediately practically relevant rather than just interesting. Dr. Davidson's research shows that consistent meditation practice is one of the most powerful interventions available for directly addressing the negativity bias at the neurological level. not suppressing it, not fighting it. Actually changing the brain's default orientation, progressively, measurably, in ways that persist beyond the meditation session itself, and begin to shift the baseline state from which you navigate your entire financial and emotional life. Remember those elite meditators with 60,000 hours of practice whose gamma waves had become their default state? Their brains were not working harder to maintain a positive orientation. They were not white-knuckling their way through the negativity bias with sheer willpower. The practice had literally changed what their brains defaulted to. Changed the neural infrastructure that determines where attention goes automatically, and therefore what gets created, what gets attracted, what becomes visible as possibility in their daily experience. And the extraordinary news, the part that I want you to really hear clearly, is that you do not need 60,000 hours for this to begin happening. Davidson's research found that just 30 minutes of daily meditation, practiced consistently over 2 weeks, produced measurable changes in brain activity. Just 7 hours of total practice, spread over several weeks, was enough to produce significant positive changes in the brain. 7 hours, that is all the research required to begin seeing genuine neural change. Which means the distance between your current brain and a brain that is beginning to orient toward abundance rather than threat, toward possibility rather than danger, toward the expansive gamma wave state from which Dispenza's elevated state of being becomes accessible. That distance is measured not in years of dedicated monastic practice, but in weeks of consistent daily effort. Now let me show you exactly what that practice actually looks like, because this is the part where everything we have covered today becomes something you can actually begin tomorrow morning. Let me tell you something that took me way too long to understand about meditation, and I think it is the reason so many people try it, struggle with it, and eventually give up on it before it has a chance to produce the changes the science shows are possible. The problem was never that meditation does not work. The problem was that I was approaching it like an achievement, something to get right, something to succeed or fail at. And every time my mind wandered, which was constantly, especially in the beginning, I interpreted that as evidence that I was doing it wrong, that I was not the kind of person who could meditate, that my mind was simply too active, too restless, too deeply conditioned by years in the financial world to ever genuinely settle. Sound familiar? Here is what I know now that I did not know then. A wandering mind during meditation is not failure. It is the practice. Every single time you notice your mind has drifted to a financial worry, to tomorrow's schedule, to the conversation you had yesterday, and you gently bring it back, you are doing exactly what meditation is designed to do. You are training the muscle of conscious attention. You are literally building, through repetition, the neural infrastructure of the gamma wave state that Davidson's research documented in those monks. The monks did not start with sustained gamma activity. They built it, one returned attention at a time, one moment of noticing and redirecting at a time. Across tens of thousands of hours of exactly the kind of imperfect, mind-wandering, keep coming back practice that most beginners give up on because it does not feel like it is working. It is working. Every single time you return, something is being built. Now let me give you the 4 practical principles that Davidson's research and my own experience point toward as the foundation of a practice that actually sticks and actually produces the neural changes we have been talking about. The first principle is start smaller than feels significant. I know this goes against the achievement orientation that most of us carry. It feels like 1 minute of meditation cannot possibly be worth doing. But here is the truth. 1 minute of genuine present moment attention, practiced consistently, is building the same neural pathways as 30 minutes of distracted performance. The goal in the beginning is not duration. It is consistency. It is the daily repetition of returning your attention, however briefly, to the present moment. Start with what you can actually do every single day without resistance. Even if that is 1 minute. Even if that is 30 seconds. Start there and let it grow naturally. The second principle is anchor your practice. Choose a specific time and a specific place and connect your meditation practice to something you already do consistently every day. For me, it follows my breathwork, which itself follows waking up. The sequence is so established now that one triggers the next almost automatically. Find your anchor. Maybe it is right after you make your morning coffee. Maybe it is the moment you sit down at your desk before your workday begins. The specific anchor matters less than its consistency. Same time, same place, same trigger, every day. The third principle is release the guilt completely. You will have sessions where your mind is everywhere but the present moment. Sessions where you spend the entire time mentally rehearsing conversations or running through your to-do list or worrying about something that has nothing to do with what you are trying to create. And that is fine. Genuinely, completely fine. A distracted session still counts. A session where you returned your attention 17 times and drifted 16 of them still built something. The only session that produces no benefit is the one you skip, because the previous one felt imperfect. Show up imperfectly rather than not showing up at all. The fourth principle is never miss 2 days in a row. One missed day is a human moment. 2 missed days is the beginning of a pattern. And patterns, as we have established thoroughly on this channel, are extraordinarily powerful things in both directions. The pattern you want to build is the one where missing feels like the exception, not the rule. Where your nervous system has associated the morning with this practice so consistently that skipping it feels genuinely wrong, rather than genuinely tempting. Now I want to close with something that ties all of this together in a way that I hope makes the whole picture clear. Sadhguru, the Hindu mystic and spiritual teacher who has spent decades sharing the ancient wisdom of yoga and meditation with the modern world, says something that I find both simple and profound. He says that the reason these practices have survived for thousands of years is not because ancient people believed in them, it is because they worked. Generation after generation, culture after culture, tradition after tradition, people kept meditating because the results were undeniable even before anyone had the tools to explain why. Now we have the tools. Dr. Davidson showed us the gamma waves. Dr. Dispenza showed us the elevated state of being. Dr. Lipton showed us how fear blocks manifestation at the cellular level. And Dr. Huberman showed us how genuine practices like breathwork and gratitude create the biological conditions for all of it to work. What the monks knew intuitively, science is now confirming with data. And what science is confirming is that the practice of consistently returning your attention to the present moment, of training your brain, one redirected thought at a time, to operate from a state of expansion rather than contraction, is one of the most powerful things any human being can do for their health, their cognition, their emotional baseline, and yes, their capacity to genuinely create the life they want. You do not need 60,000 hours. You need consistency. You need the willingness to start smaller than feels significant, and to keep showing up even when the sessions feel imperfect. Because the brain you are building, one returned attention at a time, is the brain that makes everything else we have talked about on this channel not just possible but natural. And that brain is available to you, starting tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this video. It truly means the world to me, and I hope this conversation brought you something real, something that changes not just how you think about meditation, but how you actually show up for it. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel. We have so much more to explore together. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. The books that have shaped my journey are all linked in the description below. And the free PDF on equal hours and their meanings is there too. Grab yours if you have not already. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.